Welcome, everyone. Good morning to those who are gathered here in the sanctuary on Rugby Road and to all who are joining us online via Zoom. As we come together for worship, we begin with a musical prelude offered by Scott Deveaux.
Will you hold this? I'm going to go to the bathroom. Your feet are very much in my way.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning and welcome to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Tori Goodloe. It is wonderful that we are gathered together for worship this morning, both online and here on Rugby Road. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on land that was the homeland of the Monacan people and that was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering as a community of memory and hope. I invite you now to take a moment to greet others who are with us in worship this morning. Those online can unmute and say hello to one another, and those of us here in the sanctuary or social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you may not know.
Morning, everybody.
Hello.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Good to see all your faces. Yeah.
Sounds noisy in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
It is good to be together. We welcome those who are new to our congregation and invite you to join us for fellowship after the service in the social hall. Feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are for newcomers to our congregation. We continue to ask that everyone in the sanctuary and throughout the building keep your high-quality N95 or KN95 mask in place, covering both your nose and your mouth. If you don't have a face mask with you, we have extras available. When you are in the social hall, you may remove your mask while actively eating or drinking. We ask those not actively eating or drinking to please keep your masks on. We see the continued wearing of face masks while indoors as an act of kindness that keeps everyone, especially those most at risk, as safe as possible while we continue to navigate life during the ongoing pandemic and the flu season. Hand sanitizer is provided in pews, which we invite you to use as needed. In addition to the sanctuary, seating is available in the social hall where there is a live stream of the service. Everyone is welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. Please do whatever you need to feel comfortable as we worship together. Many thanks to all the folks helping us share worship both here and online. Our on-site greeters, ushers, and hospitality and logistics team, and special thanks to our AV tech, Rachel Buckland, supporting the dual platform worship both online and here on Rugby Road. Our thanks to musical director Scott Deveaux for sharing his musical gifts, and I'm pleased to be weaving this morning's service with Rev Tim. Now here to greet you from your Board of Trustees is Pam McIntyre.
Good morning. Hey. I have recently had some astounding experiences at UUCville. Not astounding like a space rocket launch or something like that, but astounding like I have never had such collaboration before. I met in several groups of UUCville folks with people who have diverse experiences and diverse expertise, and we truly listened to each other. And as we listened and built on each other's wisdom, we came up with ideas and plans that none of us saw coming. People spoke from the point of view of finance and stewardship, spiritual understanding, community dynamics, and strategic problem solving. And I felt my brain grow and my heart swell. And this is one of the many reasons I love being part of this congregation. I foresee that we'll continue this astounding growth process as we work on our first developmental goal to unite in a broad shared vision of our purpose. As the first step in this process, I encourage you to sign up for a cottage conversation to talk together about the purpose of UUCville. We have room in groups that are meeting today after the service if you are super inspired to meet today. Not only is it rare to have the experience of truly listening and being listened to and experiencing astounding growth, but I believe it is exactly what the world needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam. Here are our announcements this morning. Next Sunday is the kickoff of our 2023-24 Pledge Drive. The theme this year is Together We Build, and there will be a soup celebration after the service in the social hall. We encourage you to make your annual pledge next Sunday as well, and pledge forms will be available. And don't worry if you can't remember what your current pledge is. This year, we will have personalized pledge forms available with the amount of your current pledge, as well as a giving guide that you can consult in making your new pledge. Please join us for fellowship, fun, and the kickoff of our pledge campaign. Our church youth are selling attractions coupon books in the social hall to support their upcoming service trip to repair homes in Appalachia through the Appalachian Service Project organization. The books cost $25. Proceeds will go toward expenses including nightly ice cream, snacks, gas, scholarships, and more. Your generosity gives you a bonus of discount coupons to fine and fast food dining, all kinds of entertainment, auto maintenance, hardware stores, and more. Buy 2 and give 1 to a friend or newcomer to welcome them to our area. The youth and their advisors, thank you very much. For more information, speak with Margaret Gorman or Reverend Leah. Finally, supervised play on the playground is available for children 5th grade and younger from 12:30 to 1:30. This allows parents to attend the weekly UU Parent Circle in the parlor. Come and enjoy time with and support from other UU parents while your children play and continue to build connections with friends from church. Please remember to sign your children in and out.
Good morning, everyone. Nice to see you here today. It's great to welcome you to the congregation of Charlottesville. I'm Reverend Tim, in case you hadn't figured that out already. I want to begin this morning with some words from my colleague that I've adapted, Reverend Hope Johnson. She says, "We are one, a diverse group of proudly kindred spirits, here because we choose to journey together. We care deeply. We live our love as best we can by paying attention and asking questions, by listening and living our answers, by learning to love our neighbors, by learning to love ourselves, apologizing and forgiving with humility, being forgiven through grace, creating beloved community together. We are one. Come, let us worship together."
As the Schock family comes up to light the flame of our chalice this morning, please join me in saying our unison chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning in celebration of the life we share together. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is a church of the open minds. This is a church of the helping hands. This is a church of the loving hearts.
Schock family. So now let's rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn. We're going to sing 2 verses from this hymn because it's a little long. It's called We Laugh, We Cry. It's number 354 in the gray hymnal if you want to follow along there. The lyrics will also be on the screen. We'll be singing verses 1 and then verse 4. So please rise.
I should also point out that I have a slight cold, which has kind of pushed my range into the lower register. So I'm going to be singing down an octave. And you can either join me or you can sing wherever you want. We laugh, we cry, we live, we die, we dance, we sing our song. We need to feel there's something here to which we can belong. We need to feel the freedom just to have some time alone. But most of all, we need those friends we can call our very own. And we believe in life and in the strength of love. And we have found a need to be together. We have our hearts to give. We have our thoughts to receive. And we believe that sharing is an answer. We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. We seek to put an end to all the waste of human strife, but search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. But then we come together here to make sense of what we find, and we believe in life and in the strength of love, and we have found no joy being together, and in our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see even to question truly is an answer.
So some of you may have heard the joke, it's an old joke, why are Unitarian Universalists such bad hymn singers? And the answer is because they're reading ahead to make sure they agree with what they're singing. So, with that in mind, I invite our children to come forward, or anybody who's feeling young at heart to come up and be here on the red rug, because Reverend Tim and I want to have a little chat this morning with you.
Come on
So
down.
come on down, yeah.
That's okay.
Karina, why don't you go ahead and pick those back up and put them in the pew. Make room for your friends who are coming behind you. All right. Oh, it's so nice to see all of you here today.
Yes.
So nice to see all of us here in this room together this morning. So we just sang a hymn that I really like a lot. We laugh, we cry. That talks about what it's like to be together here as a community. And did any of you notice what the last verse, the lines of the last verse were? Would you open your hymnal up, Ruth, and you just closed it. I know I saw you singing from it this morning. So, yeah. So 354, yeah. So we were singing, and the last verse is...
You got to get to the last page.
Answers to the questions of this life. We work to put an end to all the waste and human strife. We search for truth, equality, and blessed peace of mind. And then we come together here to make sense of what we find.
All right, pause there, Ruth. So we seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. What do you think that means? We seek elusive answers to the questions of this life. Anybody? Hard to know the answers. What did I hear down here on the red rug? Not sure. Yeah. Hard to know the answers. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Difficult questions. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Ruth. Oh, I shouldn't have had you close your hymnal. Can you find it again? It's actually the very last line that we're going for. So maybe you can find the very last line in that hymn.
Last
The
line.
very last page, yeah.
Okay. And in our search for peace, may we finally see, even to question is truly an answer.
In our search for peace, maybe we'll finally see that even to question truly is an answer. Yeah. Now let's think about that for a minute. How could questioning be an answer?
What do you think?
What do you think, Levi? You're asking and you're also getting the answer. Yeah. Has anybody ever told you, stop asking questions? You ever heard that? Well, one of the things in our faith tradition is we say, let's keep asking questions.
Yes.
Because we know that curiosity is a way to help us all keep learning and growing. Growing starts with the letter G. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But I have this piece of paper here because I wanted to kind of have a reminder of a bumper sticker, you know, things that people put on the back of their cars that you see when you're driving around. Well, this was sort of what the bumper sticker looked like when I was growing up. It was sort of an advertisement for Unitarian Universalism, and it said, "To question is an answer." Now, do you think most people knew what that meant?
They thought we were confused.
They thought we were confused, says Scott. Yeah.
But it led him to ask questions.
Yeah, it
Who are
led them
those
to
people?
it led them to ask questions.
Yes.
Yeah, so I remember as a kid seeing that bumper sticker and thinking, what does that mean? What does that mean? Question is an answer. But as Levi just told us, if we keep asking questions, it's a way that we can keep growing, which reminds me of our green candle on our rainbow chalice. Anybody remember what the rest of the green candle says? We're growing. Anybody? Oh, there's a hand. Kasha. In truth and meaning, yes, we're growing in our ongoing search for truth and meaning. So I think Reverend Tim had something he wants to share about this idea of growing in our ongoing search for truth and meaning.
I do. So I have to tell you guys that when I first started attending a UU congregation like this one day the minister said something that when he said this, I knew I was a UU. And you know what he said? He said, in our religion, in Unitarian Universalism, if you feel like you don't know the answer, that's okay. That's actually good because you're learning, you're asking questions, you're growing. And when I started at that congregation, and to this day, I have a lot of questions, and I love being part of a religion and a congregation where we celebrate asking questions. And today, I think when you all go off to your classes, and today in the sanctuary, we're going to be learning about a famous Unitarian, a man named Ethelred Brown. In fact, I have a couple of pictures of him up here on the screen, one when he was a young man and one when he was older. That's the young Ethelred on the left and the older Reverend Brown on the right. He was a Unitarian minister, and he grew up not in Unitarianism, but when he was a kid, he was always asking questions. He was hearing stories, some of them from the Bible, that he just had a lot of questions about. And the church he was going to was like, no, that you had, like you said, Reverend Leah, you're asking too many questions. And then one day he heard about this religion, Unitarian Universalism, although then it was just Unitarianism where he was. And he heard and found out that it was good to ask questions. And that in that moment, he became a Unitarian, became a Unitarian minister, and had lots of wonderful ideas and did lots of wonderful things in our religion. So he's a really interesting person. You're going to be learning a little bit more about him today in your classes, and I'm excited to share a little bit in church today as well. So
Wonderful. All right. Well, as the congregation sings our young people to their religious education classes, I'm going to invite Louisa to come up and light our green candle with me on the chancel, and we'll begin our way to move to our classes.
great.
As we leave this friendly place, love give light to every face.
Okay. Did you find it? Oh, nice. Do you want to keep it? Or do you want me to have it?
I want you to have
I'll put it up on the pulpit, okay? All right. Well, as you heard earlier during the announcements, we are getting ready to kick off our 23-24 fund drive, pledge drive. And today we are blessed to welcome Haley Owens, who is one of the co-chairs of our fund drive. Yay, Haley, for that. And yes, along with Bob Brett. And so Haley is going to share a little testimonial with us. Haley, welcome. Come on up.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend Tim, and thank you to all of you, and to my co-chair out there, Bob Brett, I see you. Today I wanted to share why I make my pledge. I make my pledge as congregation because I really believe in how much this faith community can help each other and also the wider world. I feel so inspired by what I see happening in this community, and by all of us giving our resources, we can only continue to grow in our positive impact. Many of you know that I grew up here at UUCville and before moving away to college. And then I came back and to start my career a couple years ago. It was a really different place for me. My friends had moved away and the pandemic was beginning. I had a sincere wish to deepen my roots and to find community here again in Charlottesville. And so as the pandemic began, I was invited by a mentor from my youth to be a worship weaver. And I accepted the invitation, but had no idea where that would lead me. I didn't know how wonderful it would be to be supported by this community in our mutual spiritual growth. And I soon found inspiration in the community organizing justice work of impact. It was amazing to work alongside others to insist on making our community a better place for all. And I see Kelsey over there, my other co-lead. It's amazing. So I've found that the more that I give of myself to this community, truly the more I receive. I feel more connected to my values. I feel empowered by the ways that I can be a part of meaningful change in Charlottesville. And the more I open up to you all, the more I feel known and loved. It's really wonderful to be a part of this. So I'm super excited to continue to support the congregation this year and actually increase my pledge. I just know that it will make us be able to do more together. So I hope you will join me in increasing your pledge or making your pledge for the first time this year. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Wonderful, wonderful. So friends, we're now going to enter our time of centering and sharing. And I will remind you that we are indeed an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. And of course, we lift up, as always, all the joys and sorrows that are unspoken, but remain deep in our hearts.
This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Our social action collection for the month of February is the African American Teaching Fellows, a wonderful program that offers mentoring and support for people of color teaching in local public high schools, and that several members of our congregation helped launch almost 20 years ago. Rachel, will you please show us the social action slide for giving? Thank you. In addition to giving online, if you would like to give today with cash or check, please use the social action collection envelopes here in the sanctuary and place your offering in the collection plate. Please do not seal the envelopes as we reuse them. In addition to our social action collection, each week we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges and with the weekly Sunday morning offering, together our financial gifts and support build the future of our congregation. This is our shared ministry. During the music that follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, you may bring cash or checks forward. You are invited to share not only your financial gifts, but also share the joys and sorrows in your hearts. Those online may put them in the chat box, and for those of you in the sanctuary, you may come forward to place a stone in the water. And let us dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, we accept your gifts with gratitude. May we use them wisely for the highest good. Our first reading is called Why I Am a Unitarian and is taken from the writings of Reverend Ethelred Brown. I was a choir boy of the Montego Bay Episcopal Church when the first light broke through my Trinitarianism. It was Easter Sunday, and the Athanasian Creed was recited by the priest and the congregation. The strangeness of the Trinitarian arithmetic struck me forcibly, so forcibly that I decided then and there to sever my connection with the church, which enunciated so impossible a proposition. That afternoon, I visited my uncle and happened to find a copy of Channing's sermon, Unitarian Christianity. I followed up by reading other Unitarian literature, and as a result, I became a Unitarian. I believed and still believe in Unitarianism as the religion of the future, the religion with an emancipatory message for people who have long since outgrown intellectually and morally the fundamental teachings of the older churches. Unitarianism is a religion profoundly concerned with this world and making this earth a place wherein dwell justice and peace and love.
Well, good morning again, everyone. It's good to be with you all. Welcome to the UU Congregation of Charlottesville service honoring Black History Month. Tori, very nice job this morning. May I say that you handled your Trinitarian arithmetic exceptionally well. I have to say, I am really looking forward to sharing with you some of the story of one of the most remarkable and visionary leaders in the history of our faith, Reverend Egbert Ethelred Brown. Reverend Brown was a minister, a humanist, and the founder of two Unitarian congregations, one in his home country of Jamaica and the other in New York City. His story is one of extraordinary courage, creativity, and resilience. In the face of the racism and white supremacy he encountered throughout his life, and including in this denomination, Unitarian Universalism. So Reverend Brown's story begins in Jamaica, where he was born in July of 1875. From an early age, he showed an inclination to religion and a talent for public speaking, and family members remarked that he was likely to become either a minister or a lawyer. He also displayed a skeptical, questioning mind, which did not always get the approval of his elders. As Brown recalled, he was an inquisitive youngster and a truthful child. Once he was in Sunday school and asking his Sunday school teacher about the biblical story of God destroying the walls of Jericho. So why, did young Ethelred ask, did God waste so much time when he could have brought down the walls on the first day? Yeah, those are the kind of questions that make some Sunday school teachers squirm a little. And as Brown recalled, his question wasn't particularly well received. Now, as you heard in the reading, Brown's questioning mind led him to reject the Christian doctrine of the Trinity. And what a wonderful coincidence that on the very day that he decided he could no longer accept the dogmas of his church, he happened upon the most important sermon in the history of this tradition, William Ellery Channing's Unitarian Christianity. In that sermon, Ethelred Brown found a vision of religion that stressed a God of love rather than judgment, and the use of reason in religion rather than what he saw as superstition. That was the moment, that was the aha moment when Ethelred Brown knew that he was a Unitarian. And the more he read and learned about Unitarianism, the more Brown came to see a radical religion capable of liberating the oppressed, including people of color living under white colonial rule in Jamaica and African Americans here in the United States. The problem with Christianity, in Brown's view, was not only doctrines and dogmas and Trinitarian math, but also the emphasis placed on the afterlife rather than on the problems and injustices of this world. Too often, Brown felt, this otherworldly perspective was a distraction that led far too many Christians, both black and white, to focus on paradise in the next life rather than on, as I said before, the injustices right in front of them. But in Unitarianism, Brown found a religion with what he felt was an emancipatory message of hope for all people. Unitarians were free and encouraged to question, to explore, and to be themselves. Brown also found in Unitarianism a religion that was focused so much of its attention on making the world a better place, a world where justice, peace, and love could dwell. And it was that message of religious freedom and that concern for a better world that led Ethelred Brown to dedicate his life to Unitarianism. Unfortunately, when Brown tried to turn his passion for our faith, for this faith, into action, what he found was a religion whose practices did not always live up to its principles. The emancipatory message Brown found so inspiring and so promising seemed to be reserved primarily for those who were white and privileged. Previous efforts to spread the faith to people of color had met with only lukewarm support and at times outright indifference. In addition, Brown soon discovered that far too many white Unitarians were primarily concerned with one part of Unitarianism's emancipatory message, namely intellectual freedom, freedom of conscience, separation of church and state, but not as focused so much on justice and liberation for the oppressed. Thankfully, and I even would say surprisingly, these blind spots in our faith and our tradition did not discourage Ethelred Brown. He not only remained a Unitarian, he decided to become a Unitarian minister. With little encouragement or support from the denomination, he enrolled at Meadville Theological School in 1910 and was ordained as a Unitarian minister 2 years later. He then returned to Jamaica and founded the Unitarian Church in Kingston. But not long after the Kingston Church was established, Brown began encountering that racism and white supremacy that put up one roadblock after another throughout his ministerial career. After the name of our denomination at the time, the Unitarian side, known as the American Unitarian Association, after they withdrew their financial support from the Kingston congregation, Brown struggled on for several years before he was forced, in his words, to pull down the flag of Unitarianism in Jamaica. Now, as I said a minute ago, I don't know about you, but had I been in Ethelred Brown's position, I might have given up on Unitarianism. I mean, what was the point of trying to bring the Unitarian message to people of color when it was so clear the powers that be were indifferent and perhaps even hostile? Thankfully, Ethelred Brown was made of much sterner stuff than I am, and he didn't give up his dream of bringing the values and message of this faith to people of color. Instead, as he wrote in an autobiographical sketch, with a broken heart, but with my faith in Unitarianism still strong, I had to say goodbye to Kingston, Jamaica, and landed in New York in February of 1920. And here begins the history of my second congregation, the Harlem Unitarian Church. I'm going to tell you more about that church and the rest of Ethelred Brown's story in a moment, but I'm going to invite Tori now to read for you we're talking a lot about mission and purpose here in our congregation. And Reverend Brown, I'm assuming Reverend Brown probably wrote this statement of purpose for the Harlem Unitarian Church. I think it's pretty great, and I'd like to ask Tori to share it with us now.
Statement of purpose of the Harlem Unitarian Church. The Harlem Unitarian Church is a temple and a forum, a temple in which we worship the true, the good, and the beautiful, and receive inspiration to live a life of service. And a forum wherein mind sharpens mind as we strive to plumb the depths, span the breadth, and scale the heights of knowledge. Seeking truth and freedom, it strives to apply it in love for the cultivation of character, the fostering of fellowship in work and worship, and the establishment of a righteous social order which shall bring abundance of life to man. Knowing not sect, class, nation, or race, it welcomes each to the service of all.
That's pretty good. It welcomes each to the service of all. That's the church I'd want to belong to, I can tell you that. And I have to say that mission purpose statement there, I think it's one of the most inspiring visions of what Unitarian Universalism ought to be about, and what a community that calls itself Unitarian Universalist ought to be striving to do. And you know, for over 35 years from the day Brown and 8 others first gathered to form what came to be known as the Harlem Unitarian Church in 1920, until his death in 1956, Reverend Brown led, dreamed, inspired, and struggled to build a Unitarian religious community for all people, Black and white, skeptic and believer, Unitarian and members of other faiths or of no faith at all. Due to a chronic lack of resources and what I'm going to call a shameful lack of support from the American Unitarian Association, the Harlem Unitarian Church never had a building of its own, and Reverend Brown, for many, many years, never drew a salary and had to spend his time working other jobs simply to feed his family. But you know what? He still didn't throw in the towel. He never gave up. He never lost his faith in the power of Unitarianism to transform lives and transform the world. Now, in addition to being incredibly racist, the failure to support Reverend Brown and the Harlem Unitarian Church was one of the most short-sighted mistakes I think our denomination has ever made. Think about your African American history for a moment. It's hard for me to imagine a better time in our nation's history to have helped establish a Unitarian congregation in Harlem, since the founding of Reverend Brown's church coincided with that great flowering of Black culture and creativity known as the Harlem Renaissance. This was a time when traditions were being questioned, free expression was flourishing, and radical new ways of thinking about politics and society were being debated and tested. I mean, is that not a golden opportunity and moment to try to plant a Unitarian congregation? And it was squandered. And not because there wasn't a brilliant visionary leader who worked his heart out to make it happen. And don't get me wrong, the work that Reverend Brown did in Harlem was a success. With a small but dedicated group of lay leaders working side by side with Reverend Brown, the Harlem Unitarian Church was indeed a temple where the good, the true, and the beautiful were worshiped. The Harlem Unitarian Church was most certainly a forum where mind sharpened mind and where people plumbed the depths of human knowledge. And the Harlem Unitarian Church was indeed a beloved community dedicated to the service of humanity and to the building of a righteous social order. But throughout its 36-year history, the congregation was small, and no matter how hard Reverend Brown and the lay leaders tried, the financial struggling community never counted more than 100 members, and most years had fewer than 50. And although it would be easy to look at factors internal to the church, the simple truth is that the Harlem Unitarian Church remained small because that, my friends, is the way the white Unitarian power structure wanted it. For those who want to learn more about the details of Reverend Brown and the Harlem Unitarian Church's relationship with the wider denomination, you can do no better than to read this classic history by Mark Morrison Reed, Reverend Mark Morrison Reed, that he wrote as his PhD thesis back in the 1980s. It is still a fabulous read, Black Pioneers in a White Denomination. I highly recommend it. You can get it online from the UUA bookstore online and such. So please do read that book. So let me sum up that relationship by saying that from the moment the church held its first gathering in 1920 until at least the late 1930s, the American Unitarian Association refused to offer the congregation 1 penny of support, and they worked to undermine Reverend Brown, including at one point suspending his ministerial fellowship for over a decade. They called him, and see if these adjectives sound familiar, deceitful, dishonest, histrionic, all adjectives that have long been in the vocabulary of white supremacy culture. From all that I have read about Reverend Brown and his relationship with the AUA, it seems pretty clear to me that his real offense, at least in the eyes of the white power structure at the time, and I'm going to be blunt here, his offense was preaching and leading a Unitarian congregation while Black. That was his offense. Now, with a change in national leadership in the late 1930s, Reverend Brown and the church began to receive a little support. His ministerial fellowship was restored, and he soon qualified for a pension. He was now in his 60s from the denomination, meaning that Reverend Brown, because he got some income, could stop doing all the other jobs he was doing and devote himself full-time to his ministry. Think about that. A minister who had the creativity, the courage, and the resilience to plant a Unitarian congregation almost entirely on his own had to wait until he turned basically 65 to receive any support from our denomination. But that financial support always remained limited. Reverend Brown, in an unpublished history of the church that he wrote, talks about a capital campaign that he and the church excitedly launched in the mid-1940s, I think it was 46, in hopes of raising the money to build a building, to acquire a church building. With a small congregation, it's not surprising the campaign came up short. And again, no help was forthcoming from the national denomination. And I just want to make a point here about that, something that's not in this book. But in case you're wondering, maybe the denomination was strapped for cash. They couldn't afford it, right? Well, just remember, the mid to late 1940s, it was during this same time period that the American Unitarian Association was indeed providing loans and grants to new congregations that were predominantly white, including, my friends, this congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville. For those who are not aware, we might very well not be meeting in this sanctuary today had it not been for the financial support alone from the American Unitarian Association. The denomination, as I said, provided a loan, and I also have read that it sometimes provided additional funds to sustain a struggling church budget in the early years. Now, I'm not making this comparison between our congregation's beginnings and the way the Harlem Unitarian Church was treated to in any way condemn or criticize the founders of this congregation, or to suggest that the UU congregation of Charlottesville should have never been created. I think our denomination was right to seed or plant a Unitarian congregation in Charlottesville, Virginia. But they should have done the same for Reverend Brown and the Harlem Unitarian Church, especially since it was established decades before this congregation was. And I also make this comparison because it reveals something important, I think, about the question that white Unitarian Universalists, and myself included, have asked year after year, decade after decade. Why are there not more people of color in our congregations? Right? As the story of Reverend Brown and his congregation shows, for much of our history, the reason there have not been more African American Unitarian Universalists is because that's the way white Unitarian Universalists, including and especially our denominational leaders, wanted it. It's not an answer I'm sure you want to hear. It's not an easy one to hear. It's not an easy one for me to say, but friends, it's the truth. And let me just close with this. If we are to be the religion of the future that Reverend Brown put his hopes in, we UUs have got to have the courage to look at ourselves honestly. We've got to learn about the racism and white supremacy in our past so that we can eliminate it in the present. We've got to recognize and celebrate the extraordinary contributions of Unitarian Universalists like Reverend Ethelred Brown. And we've got to have the wisdom and the will to create a Unitarian Universalism that is truly welcoming and emancipatory for all people. After decades of being called names and denied support, Reverend Brown still believed passionately in Unitarianism as at the end of his life. Listen to these words from his later writings that sum up the courage and the resilience of this incredible leader and visionary. He said, "Our work has not failed at all. We, the Harlem Unitarian Church, have compelled many churches to soften their emphasis on the old, outmoded doctrines. And in fact, Harlem is today, theologically speaking, a different and better place because we were here." Amen, Reverend Brown. And we Unitarian Universalists are so blessed by your courage and your vision. May we be worthy of that vision, and may we carry forward your ministry, your dream, and your work. Amen. Blessed be. And thank you so very much for listening this morning. So, our closing hymn this morning is probably not one that Reverend Brown knew, I don't think, but I chose it today because I think it's a beautiful song. We're going to play a video of it that we have, and I'm doing it in honor of the wonderful retreat that is being organized, that has been organized by Reverend Leah and others. That's happening this afternoon at 3 o'clock. And it's a beautiful time of centering and peace and serenity and spiritual depth and lots of labyrinth walking. And we have on our YouTube playlist this lovely, lovely hymn called Here Together Going Forth, showing images of our various labyrinths. So the lyrics will be on the screen. This one is not in the hymnal, so don't bother trying to look it up. But if you would please rise in body or spirit, and let's sing this together. And Scott's going to play along on the piano as well. So please rise.
We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We
you extinguish the chalice? Friends, as we go forth from this place, may our lives be filled with those holy moments, moments of peace, moments of serenity, moments of love. May you embrace the curiosity and the questioning of Ethelred Brown, and may we as a congregation answer his call to build a free religion for all people, a religion that is determined to create a better world of justice, equity, and compassion. That is his legacy for us, and that is our calling this day and every day. Friends, be well. Take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of this world of ours. May we journey down the pathways of peace and love, and may your days be filled with great joy and great friendship and great love. Blessed be, and go in peace.